So since we want to talk about perpendicular lines, let's start by first of all looking at what perpendicular lines are. Two lines are said to be perpendicular if they meet at an angle of 90 degrees. What do we mean by they meet at an angle of 90 degrees? When we say they meet at 90 degrees, look, using these two lines as example, you see that this line touches this other line, right? And we know whenever two lines meet, an angle is formed. Now, the measure of this angle here is what we call the 90 degrees. So since the measure is 90 degrees, then we can say the two lines are perpendicular to each other. Now, when it comes to plane geometry, these lines have special features that help us to solve equations of lines. What are these features? So to look at these features, let's let the gradient of this line, that is the one in white, be M1. So I'm going to write that as M1. And then the gradient of the red one is going to be M2. So the property is that if the gradients are really, that is, if the lines are really perpendicular, and that is to say, if the angle between these two lines is 90, then if we are to multiply their gradients, so that is, we have to multiply M1 by M2, we are going to get a -1. Now, with this in mind, if we are to make M1 the subject, then we can say M1 is equal to the -1 over M2. Also, if we are to make M2 the subject, we could also say M2 is equal to the -1 over what? M1. Hence, the rule says if two lines are perpendicular, then the gradient of one is the negative reciprocal of the other. I'm taking it again. If two lines are perpendicular, then the gradient of one is the negative reciprocal. Reciprocal simply means you are flipping it of the other. In other words, the product of their gradient is equal to what? -1, as you see over here. So you can take any of the rules. That is, the product of the gradient being -1, or the gradient of one is the negative reciprocal of the other. Let's look at how we can apply these principles in solving questions. So before we actually solve some questions that will result in equations of lines, let's look at this we have over here. It says, what are the gradients of the perpendicular lines to the lines whose gradients are as follows? So for the first one, we have the original gradient being 2. If there's a line that is perpendicular to this one, what would be the gradient of that line? We said if this is M1, then M2 is the negative reciprocal. So negative reciprocal here simply means it is positive. So you put a negative, then the reciprocal of 2. Reciprocal of 2 is 1 over 2. So in that order, we have 5. So the gradient of the perpendicular line to the line whose gradient is -5 is then going to be the negative reciprocal. So the negative, then the reciprocal of -5 is what? A -1 over 5. Now we have these two negatives here, which then gives us what? A 1 over 5. That is a positive one, of course. This time around we have 3 over 4. What is the gradient of the perpendicular line to the line whose gradient is 3 over 4? It becomes the negative. Then since it is 3 over 4, its reciprocal becomes what? 4 over 3. So you realize that for reciprocal, all we want to do is actually flipping what we have. Hence, for 2 over 1, we flipped it and then it became what? A 1 over 2. And then we put our negative there. The same way for -5 over 1, we have to what? Flip it and negate it as well. So that it became what? The positive, as you see. Negative 2 over 3. So we negate it and then flip this number we have here so that it becomes a negative 7 over 2, which then gives us a positive 7 over 2. So now that we know how to determine the gradients of the negative or the gradients of the perpendicular lines, let's look at how we can actually solve questions relating to it. So considering our first question, it says find the equation of the line perpendicular to y equals 2x minus 1 and passing through 3, 4. So what do we have? We have our equation, which is y equals 2x minus 4. Now from this equation, we can determine our gradient. So our gradient m is what? 2. That is comparing it to y equals mx plus c. So as you can see, this is our gradient. Now let's denote this gradient with what? M1. Then we let the gradient of the perpendicular line be M2. So with that done, we know that the product of these two is negative 1. Or M2 will then be the negative reciprocal. So for 2 over 1, its reciprocal becomes 1 over 2. So that is 1 over 2. Or to write the formula first, it's going to be the negative reciprocal. So negative 1 over m1, which simply means m2 is then going to be a negative 1 over 2. So what do we have now? We then have our gradient, that is the gradient of the line, and at least a point that the line passes through. So using the point slope, we can solve for the equation of the line. Hence, we have y minus y1 equals m into bracket x minus x1. And take note, x1, y1 is from the 3, 4. And we have our gradient right from here. So substituting, we have our y, then minus y1, which in this case is r4, equals our gradient, which is negative 1 over 2. Then we have x minus 3, 3 from the coordinates we were given. We then want to write it properly so that it looks like the slope intercept form. So we can multiply both sides by 2. By so doing, we have our 2, then into bracket y minus 4. Then we have 2 times negative 1 over 2 into bracket the x minus 3. In which case, this 2 cancels out this 2. Then we have 2 times y and then 2 times negative 4. So that this 2 times y gives us a 2y. Then the 2 times the negative 4 gives us a negative 8. Since this is cancelled, we then have our negative 1 into bracket x minus 3. We now need to open our brackets. So we have 2y minus 8 equals a negative x, that is negative 1 times x, then a negative 1 times negative 3, which then gives us a positive 3. We need to make the y a subject. So we have 2y equals negative x plus 8, then the negative plus 3, then the negative 8 moves to the other side to give us a positive 8. Simplifying further, we have a negative x, then plus 11. We then divide each and every term by the 2. So we have 11 over 2. And hence this 2 cancels out this 2. Simplifying further, we have y being equal to a negative 1 over 2 with the x and then plus and 11 over 2. Now this then becomes the equation of the line that is perpendicular to this equation we have over here. And as you may have noticed, the gradient is the negative reciprocal of the gradient we had over here. So simply put, if you want to find the equation of a line that is perpendicular to another, and then you have at least a point, all you need to do is to determine the gradient of the perpendicular from the gradient of the line you were given. By so doing, you are going to get your gradient and a point. So with that, you can use any of the methods we have learned in our previous lessons to find the equation of the line. Let's solve one last example. For this next question, it says find the equation of the line perpendicular to 2x minus 3y plus 4 equals 0 and passing through negative 1, 2. So for this question, you will notice that we have 2x minus 3y plus 4 equals 0. This is the standard form, not in the slope-intercept form. So we would have to rewrite it in the slope-intercept so that we can determine the gradient from it. How do we do that? We do that by simply making y the subject. So making y the subject, we have negative 3y equals negative 2x, then a negative 4. That is, we are keeping this on the left-hand side, and then we are moving this to the right-hand side, and then move the 4 also to the right-hand side. We then choose to divide each and every term by negative 3. So that we have negative 3y divided by negative 3 equals a negative 2 divided by negative 3, and then a negative 4 also divided by negative 3. Cancelling out, realize that this negative 3 divides this negative 3 to give us a 1. This negative divides this negative, give us a positive. Then this also takes out this, and we have what? A positive. Simplifying, we have y equals a 2 over 3x, then plus a 4 over 3. Comparing it to the slope-intercept form, then it simply means our m, in this case, let's make it our m1, that is the gradient of the first line, is then going to be a 2 over 3. Now we know that what, since the two lines are perpendicular, if we are to let the gradient of the perpendicular line, that is the other one whose point is negative 1, 2, be m2, then m1 times m2 should give us a negative 1, right? And then making our m2 the subject, then it simply means we have a negative 1 over m1. Solving further, you are going to get your m2 being equal to what? The negative reciprocal. That is what this means. If you have to substitute, you get a negative reciprocal. So we negate and then change this to become a 3 over 2. If you insist and you want to use your substitution, then this is what you are actually going to get. So your m2 equals negative 1, then that is divided by the m1, which is a 2 over 3. Simplifying, we have a negative 1 times, we know when we want to divide by a fraction, we multiply and reciprocate. So 3 over 2, which then gives us a negative 3 over 2, which is the same as what we have over here. So it is easier using the principle than even solving to prove the answer. Hence, we have our gradient being what? Negative 3 over 2. So with this gradient in the point x1, y1 being a negative 1, 2, using the point slope method, you are going to get a y1 minus a y minus y1 being equal to m into bracket x minus x1. So what we do, we need to substitute. So we have y, then minus y1, which in this case is what? The 2. So minus 2 equals the gradient, which is negative 3 over 2 into bracket x minus x1, which is what? A negative 1. So simplifying, we have our y minus 2 being equal to negative 3 over 2, then into bracket. That is solving the bracket first. We have x, then plus 1. Because these two negatives are going to give us the 1. Simplifying further, we have our y minus 2 equals a negative 3 over 2 times x will give us a negative 3 over 2x. The negative 3 over 2 times 1 would also give us a negative 3 over 2. We need to simplify further. So we have our y minus 2, which is equal to a negative 3 over 2x minus 3 over 2. We need to move the negative 2 to the other side so that we can do that simplification. So we have y equals negative 3 over 2x minus 3 over 2, then plus a 2, which then gives us a negative 3 over 2x plus a 1 over 2. You can leave it this way, which is absolutely correct. But if you want to also leave your answer in the standard form, then it simply means you are going to multiply each and every term by 2, which will then result in a 2y equals negative 3x plus a 1. Upon further simplification, you have a 3x, then plus a 2y equals 1. This is also accepted. So as you have seen, it is very, very easy to find the equation of a perpendicular line if only you've been able or you are able to determine the gradient. As usual, I'll leave you with some exercises just to test your understanding. If there's any issue of concern, you can always let me know at the comment section. So here are 5 questions you can try on your own. You just follow the rules just as we have done together, and I'm sure you'll be able to find the solutions to this. Let's have beyond numbers where we learn maths the easy way. If this is your first time and you think it will be of help to you, you can choose to subscribe if you so do wish, so that anytime I release a video, you'll be notified as well. Stay blessed and bye for now.